Hi friends, today we're going to read the story of how the ice cream cone came to be. This is called Ice Cream Cones for Sale. And you might not know the story of who was the first person to invent the ice cream cone. So let's read and find out. This is by Elaine Greenstein. Ice Cream Cones for Sale. This takes place, this first part, it looks like, the St. Louis World's Fair. Have you heard about the Great Ice Cream Cone controversy? It all began on April 30th, 1904. Opening day of the World's Fair in St. Louis, Missouri. Now, that was 116 years ago. There were more than 50 ice cream sellers at the fair, and they say a lot of waffle makers. At some point, the two came together to form an ice cream cone. But who came up with the idea first? And then there's these 5 people. It looks like that's who these are the people the story is going to be about. We have Arnold Fornichow, Ernest Hamwee, Charles Menches and a lady friend, Abe Dumar, and David Abayao. Some folks say it was a young man named Arnold Fornichow. Arnold said that he ran out of dishes at his ice cream stand one warm day, so he asked Ernest Hamwee at the next stand over to make some waffles for him, which he then rolled into cones. And so can you imagine how you can have a really thin waffle and then roll it up into a shape of a cone? But Ernest Hamwee, a waffle maker from Syria, said it was his idea. He took one of his warm waffle cookies, which he called zalabia, rolled it up and offered it to his neighbor. "Arnold, my boy, see if your scoop fits in this." After that, no one wanted a dish. Everyone wanted a cone. Or so they say. But other people claim that Abe Dumar dreamed up the cone. Abe sold souvenirs at the fair during the day. At night, he hung around talking to the waffle makers and watching the hoochie coochie dancers. Supposedly, one night, Abe got the great idea, which he shared with Ernest Hamwee, who liked the idea so much he gave Abe one of his waffle irons to take home to New Jersey. Or so they say. But there were still more competing claims. David Abayao came all the way from Turkey to St. Louis. On the way, he stopped in France. He said he got the idea from all those fancy paper cones he saw used in Paris. Ooh la la. And so I know I've been to some places where it's like a paper cone that they just twist up and they put French fries in it or nuts in it, and it works really well as a dish. You can see the picture of it right there. Works well as a little dish you can carry around. But that's not all. A man named Charles Menches claimed that a lady friend gave him the idea after he'd handed her flowers and an ice cream sandwich at the same time. She took off the top of the sandwich and rolled it into a vase for the flowers and rolled the bottom into a cone for the ice cream. Arnold, Ernest, Abe, David, and Charles, and his lady friend were all at the fair. But Who is the true inventor? None of them. Oh, none of them. The honor belongs to a man named Italio Marchioni. In 1895, Italio came to the United States with a suitcase and his grandmother's recipe for ice cream. Soon, he had his own push cart in New York City. Ice cream, 4 cents a dish. Get your ice cold ice cream. Every day from Wall Street to Houston Street, Italio scooped ice cream and then he waited and he waited and waited. He waited for his customers to finish their treat and return the dish before he could push his cart ahead and sell more ice cream. Because back then they didn't make like paper and plastic dishes and plates and things like that. They were actually made to be washed and reused. So he had to wait for people to return his dishes. The truth is, I couldn't find letters or articles about how Italio actually came up with his big idea, but this is what I imagine. Every afternoon, Italio stops at Louie's bake shop. Perhaps Italio gives Louie a dish of ice cream, and Louie gives Italio a cookie. Maybe Italio uses Louie's sink. Remember, this is still the made-up part. And then one day, a big black dog bumps into Italio. The dish slips from Italio's hand. The scoop flies into the air, and somehow, Italio catches the dish. Louie catches the ice cream on the cookie. That's the made-up part. Sometimes when authors are retelling stories, even true ones, they add extra details. Italio can't get the idea out of his mind. Maybe Louie shows Italio that you can shape a cookie when it's warm and that some cookies will bend more than others. Louie starts making cookies for Italio so he can try the idea. Imagine, no dishes, no waiting, no washing. I imagine that Italio sells so many cones that Louie can't make the cookies fast enough. So Italio invents a special mold for Louie to make 10 cookies at once. But this last part is true. The mold was great. In September of 1903, Italio sent a copy of the design to the U.S. Patent Office so he could stake his claim as the inventor of the ice cream cone. Documents prove Italio was awarded the patent on December 15, 1903, just months before the World's Fair opened in St. Louis. So if you have an invention, you can send in your design for the invention to a place called the U.S. Patent Office, and they will give you a very special, what's called a patent, which is pretty much saying, here, you are the only person, the first and only person to think of this idea, and so it is yours. And nobody else can say that it's theirs. Of course, as you know now, that didn't stop all those other people in St. Louis from claiming it was their invention. Probably as far as they knew, they were the first. And to add one more tasty wrinkle to our story, if you look closely, it seems we could be talking about 2 different kinds of cones. Italio's cone is more like the one we now call a wafer cone. Some people call it a cake cone. And the St. Louis version is more like what we call a sugar cone, or you guessed it, the waffle cone. So I know sometimes if you go to get ice cream, they ask you if you want what we call now a cake cone, which has the flat bottom, or a sugar cone, which has the pointy bottom. I always choose a sugar cone. I think they taste better. I don't really like the taste of those so much, but some people do. So. No matter what kind of cone, everyone agrees on this advice. Step 1, lick around the bottom edge of the scoop to prevent drips. Number 2, don't lick too hard or the ice cream will fall out. Number 3, never bite the bottom of the cone while there's ice cream still in it. And number 4, there's no better treat than an cold ice cream cone. Yum. I love ice cream. And so, a story about one of Summer's favorite treats, summertime's favorite treat. Which kind of cone do you like best? Maybe you don't like a cone at all. Maybe you like it in a bowl. And what kind of ice cream is your favorite? I know what kind is my favorite.